Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths of corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about in their fancy marketing materials, all to help you protect your company from cybersecurity criminals. And now, here are your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello, and welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Mike Rotondo, Lauro Chavez, and our guest today, Ed Escobedo. Mike, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with the news? What's going on in cyber today?
Oh, there's a lot going on this week. Let's start out with the top of this. 4.83 million DDoS attacks took place in the first half of 2020, which is a 15% increase. People are taking advantage of the COVID lockdowns, basically. Another exciting thing to find out is that vulnerability in wireless router chipsets is prompting advisories. This is Qualcomm, MediaTek, and Realtek chipsets. Basically, there's an authentication bypass vulnerability that's out there now. Microsoft XP leak would be less of an issue if so many didn't use it. The source code is online. Apparently, it still has a large user base, and cyber criminals are using that code base to go ahead and develop new exploits for it. Why anybody's using Microsoft XP now, I don't know, but apparently they are. New old tactic from hackers is basically they're setting up front companies to disguise their hacking, and which is basically an old camouflage tactic. So they're setting up a company like XYZ Insurance Company, sending out email, duping who they can, and taking the cash and then folding the company later. There's a new ransomware out there called Egregor, and basically what their thing is that they release the data. If you don't pay, they release all your data. Some kind of mass media release. Nice of them. The FBI is warning you could spoil your working from home escape plan. Apparently what's happening is a lot of people, tired of looking at the same four walls of their office, den, bedroom, wherever they happen to be working, are escaping to hotels to work remotely. The problem is hotel security, wireless security is not all that good, never intended to be office grade, and so it's being exploited. From the truly scary and creepy, kids' smartwatches can secretly take pics, record audio, or on command by encrypted text. Apparently the brand of Chinese smartwatch called Explora, which has a back door that was apparently deliberately put in there so that it can receive an SMS to kind of check out the kids' surroundings, take pictures, and record conversations that are around. On another note, a hack groups chain VPN and Windows bugs to attack U.S. government networks. Basically, it's an additional zero login and a weakness in Fortinet, which is allowing them to exploit that. We haven't talked about it in a while, but it's something we need to continually aware of. CISA is urging utilities to increase protections and warns of potential attacks from China. It's again, attacks on the grid, the power grid, and that sort of thing is ramping back up. Kind of good news, ending with the good news. New ransomware vaccine kills programs wiping Windows shadow volumes. It's called Racine, and basically what it does is when it sees the ransomware trying to kill the shadow volumes, it kills the ransomware. So, and with that, I'll go ahead and pass on to Lauro for his vulnerabilities.
Thanks, Mike. Well, appreciate the information. I guess now I need to update my Windows XP.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Someday I've got to take my website off of that DMZ XP server. Anyway,
well, IS5 is still, a workhorse.
Yeah, it is. As far as I'm concerned, it's one of Microsoft's greatest achievements. Anyway, so if you're running an Oracle database this week, and in general, I'm sure it's going to happen again. But if you're running Oracle database 18 Charlie, there's some critical patches you need to be aware of that include some command injection and remote code execution. So those are fairly serious. So if you're running an Oracle 18 Charlie, make sure you update that. Fedora got a few things included this week for Samba. If you're running Samba on top of Fedora, there's a couple command injection weaknesses in this version. So make sure you update your Samba framework on Fedora, and then OpenSUSE again. Security updates for the DPDK packages So if you've got those up and operational, make sure you're running those updates. So again, Microsoft saved the list again this week. That's 2 weeks in a row. My money's on, they'll be on the list for a 5 next week. And that's it. That's all I got. Zach?
All right. Thank you, Lauro and Mike. Today, like I mentioned earlier, we have a special guest, Ed Escobedo. For those of you who don't know, recently joined the Silent Sector team as our Chief Strategy Officer. So it's a real pleasure to have him, work with him. And Ed brings just a deep base of knowledge with him and experience through a lot of different companies, held executive roles like the head of technology risk management for PayPal. He's CIO of Apollo Education Group. He's been VP in various forms for multiple companies like Charles Schwab and DHL. So a tremendous amount of experience, really has a great lens at the executive level of cybersecurity for large organizations. And so it's absolutely a pleasure to have him. And Ed, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Zach. It's good to be here.
Great. Well, Ed, what else would you tell us about your background? I mean, I gave the high-level overview, but anything in particular you want to share, any highlights? Don't be afraid to brag a little bit here.
Sure. Well, let me start with how I got started in the industry. So I got started back in the late 70s when I joined the Air Force out of high school, and ended up getting a job in the Air Force as a computer operations MOS. And so that launched my career, and I ended up out of the Air Force becoming what I thought was like the best job you could ever have in technology, which was an MVS systems programmer back on the days when mainframes were the hot ticket item for computing. And just a couple of things that we did back in the early 80s as an MVS systems programmers. We had a thing called, security and business continuity and disaster recovery were a key part of what we did back in the 80s. A couple of examples is, if anybody knows anything about ZOS, MVS, there was a security product that I installed back in the early 80s called ACF2, which had Kerberos security and did a lot to restrict access for critical accounts. And the other thing I remember doing back, a long time ago, back in the 80s, was our disaster recovery plan was mag tapes, where we would take backups of disk drives across the mainframe complex, put them in our car, drive to a cold site, load them on a tape drive, restore those tapes, and make sure we brought up the operating system to test our environment. So, that's how far back my experience goes, well before, the current way of thinking about security and cyber and risk management. And then you mentioned, Michael mentioned Windows XP. I remember back one of the roles I had at Schwab after I moved to California from the East Coast. I remember fondly dealing with Windows XP as a desktop. I ran desktops for our call centers back in the day at Schwab, and I think we had 10,000 desktops, using, or we had Windows XP was the endpoint, but we had a product called, I think it was SMS, Microsoft SMS, where we had to distribute patching to vulnerabilities. I remember doing like 2 or 3 nights of full-time nonstop work to patch Windows XP devices. Just trying to find those on our network was problematic, and having to go through and get those systems patched back in the day, 15, 20 years ago was hard to do. And it's interesting to find that people are still running Windows XP today. So very much resonate with the idea that those things still need to be patched, because we had trouble back in the day patching them, and it's interesting to see that people are still running those systems. So the most recent role I had was running technology risk management. And I think a large part of what I did with PayPal is helping our senior leadership on the first line of defense understand the importance and the context it means to have a mature operational shop that has operational excellence and processes around risk management and security best practices. And so I kind of felt I had 2 roles there at PayPal most recently. One was I felt like I was the general counsel for all things risk management, so helping protect the CTO and his leadership team on the things that relate to, how do we make sure that we're translating the expectations from external auditors to ensure that we're appropriately applying best practices within our operations to support the things that would come our way from external auditors, internal auditors, and second line of defense. And then the other role that I played there, which I think, because I ran technology at Apollo Education Group, which was a large online university, University of Phoenix, I felt like the other role that I had, the other hat that I wore and the other role that I played was that of educator. and helping all of our IT operational folks basically understand the various nuance of security, risk management. I think one of the things I realized is it's in some ways it's the language of risk management and security is kind of a niche language, right? People, they talk about things that are hard to understand, and so helping people understand how important these things are were clearly the role that I played and what I'm hoping to do with Silent Sector with the clients that we have.
That's great. Appreciate you sharing. With all that large corporation experience, what made you make the switch to more of a boutique firm dealing in primarily in mid-market and emerging companies?
I worked at some of the greatest companies in the world. Charles Schwab, I had a long career there. PayPal is one of the largest fintech companies in the world. DHL, I think we had 300,000 employees because we were part of the global Deutsche Post WorldNet ecosystem. And then obviously running Apollo Education Group, which was at the time had 500,000 students, online students, and was a significant player and disruptor to the industry. So I've spent, my 40-year career, all of it in large companies. And I've had some of my best friends in my personal life have been entrepreneurs. And I've always admired sort of their tenacity with what it means to be an entrepreneur. I always just talk to them about just in terms of personal relationships, the things that they did to sort of help grow their business, and they all have had really successful businesses. And so I've always admired it from the outside. And as I was transitioning from PayPal, I realized that I've never done that before. I've never worked at a small company. I've never learned the skills of what it means to help grow a company from a certain size to a larger size, and what it means to serve a market. I've always been, and this is, I think, the training from Schwab, focused on customer first. Schwab taught me that, as I grew my career there. PayPal obviously reinforced that with the focus that we had on customers and their mission. And so I thought, well, this could make sense, and let me give my energy and efforts to this venture and see how we can help grow the business. The mid-market obviously is something that because I'm a big company guy, sort of bringing that perspective to companies that are growing and need to build maturity and process to support their growth. I think I kind of have a unique vantage point to that, and with CEOs and CIOs and CISOs as they're trying to establish best practices around how to mature their capabilities. So I felt it was a good fit, and I'm excited about the opportunity. The other thing I'll say is, when I asked you all, Zach, Mike, and Laro, what your mission was, the idea of protecting companies and protecting the U.S. economy, I think to me resonated, having been a veteran with the Air Force many years ago. And so that mission resonated with me as well. And then, the idea that, most of us are veterans and minorities, I think also resonated with me, having my personal background and story being both veteran and Hispanic. So those are the reasons.
We're glad to have you. That's something we really, we don't take lightly. These mid-market and emerging companies are absolutely the backbone of the American economy and our way of life. I mean, without them, we would not be, blessed to live like we do in the United States. And so we absolutely have to protect them because they are under attack or underserved and under attack constantly. It's hard for them to find good options and support. Everybody's quick to sell them tools and products, but there's not a lot of hands-on, boots on the ground expertise for them to work with out there. So it's great to be able to bring that large corporate experience to those organizations. Of course, Mike and Laura also have backgrounds in working with within large corporate environments, so we can take and understand, what works, what doesn't, where there's traditionally a lot of waste, and where resources should be put, and really bring best practices into these organizations. So where are you seeing, throughout your career, at least, over the last 10 years or so, I mean, where do most companies struggle with their cyber risk management? What are the kind of the big factors or the big problems that you've run into?
I think it's just sort of an understanding of the importance of cybersecurity and risk management as a practice that's critical to both revenue and sort of core business operations. I mean, when I was the CIO at Apollo Education Group, I knew enough. I've always been an IT infrastructure guy, data center guy, big mainframe guy running operations for large companies, and did a lot of work on desktop collaboration back at Schwab. But I always knew that obviously you needed to have somebody that paid attention to security, and so I ended up hiring a person and knew enough to build a SOC and the importance of that, and putting eyes on glass to monitor our network. But that's kind of, I just, all right, you take care of it. Let me turn it over to you. It's sort of your baby to drive. And I used to have to represent the security progress, the program, to the risk oversight committee, which was connected to the board of directors. And so I knew that I had to pay attention to it, but I never really understood the importance of it. When I went to PayPal, I worked for the CISO there and had a global role running a large security practice for him that faced off to the business. And one of the things I learned at PayPal is that, as I said earlier, is that people don't quite understand the terminology and the importance and the expectations. And so a lot of what I found at PayPal is helping practitioners that they all want to do the right thing, but prioritizing, when you've got so many things on your plate, the importance of best practices around vulnerability management, access management, configuration management, asset management, making sure that those are integral into how you run your operations, and in some ways, a way to differentiate companies from the rest of the competitors that are in their space. I found that was something that I saw at PayPal, and we did a lot of work helping people understand the importance of things and putting in processes and dashboards to help put a spotlight on that. But I suspect that many companies that are not practitioners, that are not SMEs and sort of from the academic lens of security, cybersecurity and risk management, just don't quite have an awareness of what it means. And so I feel like part of the opportunity that I have with Silent Sector is to help sort of translate and help. All right, let me just put it in language that a CIO or a CEO or a CFO can understand, and why you have to pay attention to these things, because eventually, this could come back to bite you. So just to me, it's the role of translator in helping people have the context and the business understanding and business context to sort of help prioritize the things that need to be put in place, consistent with other things that are going on in the operations to support growth and protecting their assets.
Yeah, that translation is critical because without the right resources and budgets, it's very hard for security practitioners to get anything done. So, it's just one of those things that a lot of times we see these organizations that it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, right? And so they'll just won't put the time and attention in at the executive level to really truly understand what the risk management means to their organization, the benefits it brings, and how it supports longevity. And so, critical area to be in. I think there's not enough translation going on out there. Otherwise, we'd probably have far fewer cyber attacks happening. So what do you hope to see in the cybersecurity industry moving forward?
Yeah, so I kind of view this chapter of my career, I'm in the top of the first inning, there's NLCS. I was watching the game last night. So I've got a baseball metaphor here, man, sort of just at the very top of the first inning. And I kind of view this as a long journey, a 9-inning game. And so it's just getting started, but I'm really excited about the opportunity to serve the clients that are currently in the book of Silent Sector, and then also growing our portfolio to include other clients, particularly those that are looking that are in highly regulated areas like healthcare and financial services and fintech, where you have to basically build the foundation and the core capabilities to serve clients. So, I'm just really excited about it's really just serving clients at the end of the day, just being a servant to CEOs, CIOs, CISOs, and CFOs to help establish that capability.
Great. And you mentioned veterans and minorities earlier. I know you have some plans, some ideas to really use cybersecurity as an opportunity for young people that don't have a lot of options. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I never would have thought back growing up in the middle part of California and Fresno that I would have a career in technology that spanned, multiple decades, and that I would just feel so blessed with the opportunity that I had to be in technology. And cybersecurity has been a part of my career. And so the idea that we could help close the skills gap with those that are living in disadvantaged communities in, let's say, South Phoenix, and giving young people, men and women, people of color, and everybody that has the energy, the opportunity to sort of get into the career that for me has been just a blessing to feel like just my life was turned around. I think to me is such an important personal mission of mine. One example of that is been asked to serve on the Arizona Tech Council support with Pipeline AZ to sort of help close the skill gaps for those that are going to school and have an aspiration to get into cybersecurity, and how we connect them to jobs in the state. And so I'm excited about that, serving on their advisory council. And so those are the kinds of things that I just personally have paid attention to in my career. And then I'm going to continue to do that. And obviously, as we grow Silent Sector, the opportunity to bring in and mentor and bring in apprentices that can help them understand what it means to be a cybersecurity professional is something I'm excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. We've already had a couple students work with us on various projects, and that just they were absolute rock stars, and ready to get going and growing in their career, and so it's a lot of fun. And we certainly need more security practitioners in this country. So it's great opportunity, winning opportunity for everybody, I think. So, well, thank you so much, Ed, for joining us today. Thank you, Mike and Lauro, for your insight, and we will wrap it up and see you on the next show.
Pick up your copy of the CyberRants book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the CyberRants podcast.